Well, you all may be wondering why I'm calling you out to this wind tunnel. Well, that just has to do with the solemn fact that I like my audio quality sounding like hot garbage for my first review. Well, that being said, Necromunda. Necromunda I'm going to be breaking up into three different portions of a review. The reason for that is solely because this game is low-key two different games, and I think I should clarify in the third video what this game did do right. And you'll see what I mean when I actually fucking get there. So, starting out with the basics of Necromunda. Necromunda is about a unrest and never-ending gang war in the Underhive mine cities in the Warhammer 40k universe. These three gangs that you will follow in the story are the Monarchs, or Escher, or fucking Bang Cats, which is just a military platoon of dump truck ass, led by none other than Teresa.
Shame.
Never liked her anyway.
Whoa, whoa! We're with you!
No hard feelings?
Hell no. If Maren wanted to lead, she had to be strong enough. And she was weak. So we'll follow you, sister. So what's this all about? Why are we meeting on the way out of here? It's got to be big. Why risk it otherwise?
Big enough that Tess is more worried about those matriarchs hearing about it. Big enough to risk getting into a fight with the slab punchers.
Ooh, so the biggest. It's gotta be loot, right? Ahoy!
Shut up, Kira.
Hey, lay off!
The Rowdy Boys, also known as Gang Goliath, ran by the muscle men and women, roid heads, and just downright autistic lunatics who do nothing but build their muscle all the time, led by none other than Blutvor.
So, this train goes down below. That's what the Gilder said, right?
That's right. Ain't she beautiful? This goes where we need to go.
But isn't down below dog soldiers' turf? I heard they're all ruddy mercs or exiles or cannibals or something.
Yeah. And the grand dog's so tough and all, blah, blah, blah. I don't give a grox about him, or any of the other scum down there. We gotta get that prize.
Oi! Where do you think you're going?
On that freaking train!
You got to earn that right, boy. You gotta prove you and that little runt you're fronting won't just end up feeding the rats.
I accept your challenge, you wizened little ripperjack. Me and my rowdy boys will show you fossils the meaning of herd.
Huh, listen to this one. That's the spirit, boy. I'll let your mama know you died well when I see her next. Follow me!
And, of course, Black Ash, which is under House Olark, led by Flint, which is essentially a gang of those middle schooler kids who, would shave a mohawk into their head and wear some type of skull shirt and be really edgy. Well, they grew up now, and they have the nicest guns.
Of all the gangers I've seen, Flint was the best prospect for success. He and the Black Ash originated from the Cold Forges. The very same domes that Blutvor and Tessera should be searching by now. I needed Flint to do one more little job before I set him loose. A fair 50-50 split for him, although the Orlok was reluctant at first. I was relieved when he grudgingly accepted. Why send another gang below, you ask? Built-in redundancy, I reply. One of the three would succeed, and I would reap the rewards.
Meanwhile, some fat cat imperial-looking dude is the one who's actually kind of narrating and also dictating where these gangs go across the story. And this dude really isn't named other than being called perhaps Gilder, or he has a name in a few of the cutscenes, but he's never actually explained. Side topic, I actually figured out this dude was a part of a certain group called Delaque, but I'll get more into that in the third installment of this review. So after some petty main squabbles between the three gangs, they join up to rob a big dog known as the Grand Dog, leader of the Dog Soldiers. The story itself isn't all that bad, though the first half doesn't really correlate whatsoever with the second half, and what I mean by that. Don't smoke, kids. What I mean by that is the first, I want to say, like 7 or 8 missions or so, they correlate with the main story. But the story doesn't actually kick off until about Chapter 8. Where things actually start to make sense. You know, what the hell are we all actually doing here? How does this all actually join together? None of it actually makes sense until, well, about Chapter 8. Now, this being said, some of the missions are pretty cool. Notably, Chapter 5, which was like a blood sport arena. I really liked that. I thought it was a good touch. Between two Goliath gangs that were just really told to melee it out and beat the ever-living shit out of each other. And also Chapter, I believe, 13 and the last mission, 14, were very notable because those were actually fun. Now, I know what you're thinking, and I know what you're wondering, and I'll get to that. See, the combat in this game is actually pretty responsive and actually debatably pretty good. It sort of copies a mixture of an XCOM style, but also mixed in with its own little board top style, where you have 3 main bars: movement, health, and action points. Action points dictate what you can do, from throwing grenades to healing yourself to shooting. Movement points, of course, dictates, as the latter will instate, that these fuckers can travel only a certain distance, and if their knees are popped out of place, well, then they're about moving as far as a fucking potato. Their health dictates, how long they can take an abuse. And other than that, the combat isn't really all that too sophisticated. This game, later on in the gang wars, actually really elaborates on the combat in the way it really should have during the story. I'll give it that, but I'm not going to spoil the real fun part. You see, the combat is good all until the story. When I first played this game, I really skipped the story. I kind of knew how games like this played. And mind you, I actually got this game off of a whim. I got it more because I like things like XCOM. I like turn-based shooters. So, I decided to just kind of go out on a whim and, check out this game. Try it out. Another thing I'll definitely give it, the art style of this game is pretty good. I liked it, especially finding out later on what this universe was really about. I think whoever did the art design really did a good job. Voice acting was okay. Same thing with the cutscenes. The cutscenes were sometimes a little wacky, but for the most part, the energy is there. They're a little cartoonish. Sometimes the behavior isn't all that believable, and when you see stuff like that in video games, TV shows, movies, you kind of just go like, oh, that was fucking goofy. But it's not bad enough for it to ruin it. It's just bad enough for you to go, what the fuck is that? Well, this all being said, the story is hot fucking garbage. It's probably the worst single-player experience I probably have ever actually had to endure. And I did endure this fucking single-player experience, the solo experience. Jesus H. Christ. The only reason I actually did it was because I decided to myself, you know what? I'm going to be like a Chinese Nike sweatshop worker, and I'm going to work endlessly, tirelessly, to get me that gas mask for the fucking gang wars. And I know what you're thinking. Did this man actually dump 4 days after work into a single player that he downright hated just to get a cosmetic for a character in a video game? The answer to that riddle is yes. You see, the single player doesn't know not only how to explain combat, but it will actually cheat. And not, cheating bitch like in chess where it'll move the player an extra couple inches. Here, though, I'll debate with anybody in some of these scenes. You might even notice the AI seems to do that when it actually is a little bit more coherent than a fucking wet pencil. No. See, the AI, what it does is it works off of the fact that you are indeed new to this mission. You are new to the environment that you're in. And see, the game doesn't fucking tell you half of the mission, despite the fact that you are on a round-based timer. And what that means is every time I run through the circulation of my units, I lose a round, right? So now I'll go from 5 rounds to 4 rounds to 3 rounds, right? And that's how the game flies. Well, see, if you tell me by round 2, when I have 2 rounds left, that I now have to run across the map, rig an assembly for something, and then perhaps blow something up, and at the same time keep specific characters alive, what you've just told me is, by the way, you know that 40 minutes you put into this goddamn mission, because none of the missions are at least remotely fast except the first 2? That 40 minutes, you can go fuck yourself in that 40 minutes. Oh, this is the game you play after work? Stupid bitch. And, this being said, it's not like, they're complete fucking drags. Mission 3 was fun, Mission 5 was fun. Mission 12 was pretty fun when all the gangs start to align up and actually work together. But this being said, right, when the game doesn't tell you really necessary things for you to know before you enter an exchange or a skirmish, if you will, it's essentially just going off the fact that you don't know your environment. And now, yeah, when you start the game, you're not going to really know how this works. But I was not shysted that hard every time I played the Gang Wars. The Gang Wars, which I started out on, I'll debate with anyone, is probably a better way to learn the game. You learn the mechanics, you learn the fighting rules, you learn how to steal shit. Which is shit that does come up in the single-player experience. But it just completely is thrown out the door the moment you start talking about, what's a good chapter, for example? I think it was Chapter 11. Chapter 11, where you have to go from the top of this, every map is essentially leveled in like 4 different stories, 5 stories, sometimes like 3. And you had to go from the top of that all the way to the bottom, set explosives, which sets off the round timer. So now you'll only have like 4 rounds to go. Well, then after that, it will riddle to you that you must now also destroy a computer. So while you're setting up these explosives, which, by the way, take up inventory space and take up space for your characters to be holding shit. So those 2 characters that you're using to deliver the explosives, they're completely fucking nerfed until they set those explosives. But also, you now need to use 2 other characters as a means of running to these objectives and kicking them really fucking hard. I'm not even understating that. That is the premise of the mission, is to kick a computer really hard. And at the same time, you need to keep, I believe it's Blutvor alive and 1 other character alive. One of Teresa's dump truck ass toting women. As a single player experience does this to you, it's essentially just telling you, hey, your best bet, your best move is when you start each experience, when you start each round, run from one side of the map to the other. Don't ignore everything. Ignore all sense of logic and reason. Right, because you're gonna restart it anyways. This game demands essentially that you restart every round. Every new chapter, you're going to restart it. Solely because it didn't explain anything to you. And that's terrible story design. So terrible, in fact, I will say outright before this is even my little rant is done. That it crippled it all the way down to a 2.5, if not a 2. You know, the cutscenes were good. Yeah, the music was good. Hell, I had fun. But man, every chapter, I only had 14 chapters. Each and every single chapter was a fucking meat grinder all the way until around chapter 13 to 14. Because every single chapter relies on the fact that you don't know what exactly you're going to be doing. The game doesn't explain it to you in the cutscene or, you know, at the beginning of the mission. It doesn't give you the actual objectives until you discover them. It expects you to discover, objectives. And now you're telling me that everything I have built up to, my whole tactic that I had built up to prior, is null and void. It's completely worthless. If anything, it has just essentially made my entire past 30 minutes, 40 minutes, hell, an hour, completely fucking pointless. And this is, by the way, just excluding the batshittery of the AI. You see, because the AI works solely off of this premise in the solo mode, in the single-player mode. You don't really see this type of shit oftenly in Gang Wars. Gang Wars, you do see some batshit behavior. You see some outrageous behavior, but you do not see the AI just downright Allahu Akbar across the map to kill one character, and out of all the characters that it sees, it is the one character that needs to survive. So the game is working off the fact that it knows that character has to survive. And that's just fucked up. Say what you will, say, it needed some type of difficulty curve. Yeah, Gang Wars is kind of difficult, though. There's a chance you don't win every Gang War, right? Against the AI. But when it boils down to just quote-unquote figuring out the game, which is what the solo mode was quote-unquote advertised as, is figuring out the rules, figuring out the game. There are no rules. It's Vietnam. This game will pull shit out of its ass. It will make up rules as it goes. And laugh as it fucking does it. This game will fuck you over with a persistent passion. Man. So, this being said, the solo mode it's a good story. I liked it. Kind of cinematic, really. PG-13 cinematic movie. It was pretty good. Which is surprising, by the way, if you know the actual environment this is all based around. Based around the Warhammer 40k universe, where there's literally a species of alien that dedicate its form of torture to butt-fucking you. Now, was this game made, or at least the solo story mission combat made by the Dark Eldar? I don't know, but sometimes I wonder if this was their variant of way of butt-fucking the player. Not only systematically, but fucking aggressively. The game just gives no room for a sense of success in winning, At a certain point, I think it was around like chapter 6, I started just realizing, there is no winning the chapter right out the gate. I'm going to have to restart sooner or later, no matter how many times I did it. And like an insane asylum patient, each time I started a round, I would try my best from the beginning of the match to the end, win it, right? But it would always throw in that curveball. It would always throw in that variable that would just completely devastate how you approach the map. The time it stopped doing that, it knocked that off, from chapter 3 all the way till chapter 13. So even the chapters that I liked, by the way, I had to restart those. Like chapter 5, I had to restart that like twice. I had to figure out what the fuck was exactly going on. It's just a blood sport. You just have to, pick up weapons and melee each other to death, which is pretty cool. I liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. But it's not explained. It's not explained why my first character spawns without a melee weapon. It's not explained that, it's going to be one character spawns in at a time, and where from. So, the best part was I had to run across the map, start fighting one of the enemies, and I was doing good, just for another enemy to spawn in right behind that enemy and just devastate my shit, and immediately I lost a character. You know? Which you don't want. You don't want that a majority of the time. The moment you lose one of your NPCs, or not your NPCs, but the moment you lose one of your characters, completely fucked the mission. Also, speaking of NPCs, you're probably noticing on the screen, if in some of these portions I'm showing you, that there is an ally NPC-esque character. This character, this ally party of AI, ranges from brain dead useless as fuck to equally as kamikaze as the AI is when it boils down to being against you. And sometimes it's hilarious, sometimes it's just annoying. Like, why couldn't I just control this party? I damn well know how to make them all effective. And at some points, I was practically begging the AI on the friendly team to be effective. But sometimes all they do is run into a room, set a trap down, and then run into it. Or better yet, they would run into a corner and just go into Overwatch, but it's a corner across the map. So all they're doing is fingering them fucking selves, while I'm just getting completely devastated with nuclear arms, man. So, like I said, the story mode of Necromunda Underhive Wars is not why you should be playing this game. Period. This game, I will say later on, in especially my second review, it did a lot of things right. This was actually a fun game. A good game at that. But I needed to get the single-player experience out of the way. I needed this to be its own separate video for the sole purpose of, a lot of people review this game and they'll tell you, it's a bad game, period. It's not. In fact, actually, I will say, I want to keep it all on its separate rant, actually, but what I will say is this game didn't do completely terrible. It's not rememberable, it's not amazing, but it did do some things that people aren't getting it credit for. So outright, I'm going to get the bad part of the game out of the way. The single-player experience was very creatively done, but whomever designed it either didn't anticipate the difficulty status of the AI cooperating with the challenge and variable of the game, or they deliberately made it this way, which, if that's the case, is just terrible game design. So yeah, tune in for part 2. Thank you all for watching. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, especially comment. I like seeing what people might want out of my channel and want to see what I could provide. Thank you, and have yourselves a great time.
So, we're all agreed?
Cover fire. Slow and steady advance, then...
Then grab the archaeotech and go home. See? I listened.
If the clans ever hear about this little team-up, we'll all be outlawed.
We'll be so stinking rich by then we won't care.
I'm feeling it. Let's do this.